Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Sunday Service with the Atheist Reformation. Joining me again today is my co-host, Harry. How are you doing today, Harry?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. Well, as people can probably see in the ticker down below, of course, the Atheist Reformation wishes you all a happy new year for 2020. So this is our first episode of the new year. Hope everybody likes that I'm now able to use overlays through StreamYard. So we'll see how it goes. So, as always, please like, comment, and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get this show on the road. We've got 3 different articles that we're going to be talking about today, one of which is going to be a proposed vaccine bill to end religious exemptions to vaccines in New Jersey. There is also a proposal supposedly having come from the Department of Education that seeks to essentially federally subsidize religious organizations and religious education, which we'll get deeper into that as we go. There may be some additional information that may be in the legislation that makes this a bit easier to understand and also could possibly clear up some potential misconceptions. And then, of course, we're also going to cover, kind of a lighthearted article to round everything out, bringing back an article from a couple of years back, since it seems to have kind of fallen by the wayside and people don't talk about it much anymore. Is we're going to talk about how the Shroud of Turin is fake news.
Isn't that 700 years ago?
Say what?
Isn't that actually an article from like 700 years ago?
Well, I mean, article of cloth, perhaps, but as far as the article itself, looks like that came from July of 2018, at least based on what's in the Independent, which is where I'm going to be pulling that from today. The other 2 articles are being pulled from the American Atheists, the atheist.org, American Atheist Center website, and their news and blog that's going on there. And so I guess we should go ahead and just jump right in. What do you say?
Sounds good to me.
All righty. Let's see here.
I think a couple of the articles got some clickbait titles on them where they aren't exactly what they claim to be.
That's quite possible. And we're going to get into that and see what's going on there. So let's see. Go with that. And as always, got the little Chiron running. All articles are linked in the video description below if you want to check them out further, or if you think that I'm giving somehow a disingenuous read of an article. So, in looking at this, title's pretty straightforward. Atheists tell New Jersey to end religious exemptions from vaccination requirements. So, looks like in Trenton, New Jersey. Now, this dates back to December 12th. So, this is a couple weeks old. And we'll try and find more information as this situation develops. So today, American Atheist President Nick Fish delivered testimony urging the New Jersey Senate Committee on Health, Human Services, and Senior Citizens to amend a bill, their State Senate Bill 2173, to remove religious exemptions from public school immunization requirements. His statement is that when parents refuse to vaccinate their children, they endanger their lives and the lives of their classmates, particularly those who are unable to receive vaccinations for medical reasons. No young person should be subjected to preventable and potentially debilitating infectious diseases due to the personal religious beliefs of their caretakers or classmates. Now, to kind of give a little bit of context, we have some information here in these 2 paragraphs talking about how the use of religious exemptions is on the rise in New Jersey. So during the 2017-18 school year, about 2 years ago now, the number of these exemptions increased to more than 12,000, which about a decade ago, there were only about 1,600. Now, this could be for a number of reasons. This could be changes in demographics in the region in and of itself, because we do know that populations are a dynamic thing. They're always in flux. People move in and out of areas all the time. So it could just be that there's an increase in religious people, but we'll get more into that.
What is the devout religious preference of New Jersey? That I'm trying to figure that one out.
I don't know if there is a devout religious preference to New Jersey, in all honesty. But looking at this, I don't think that there would be enough of a shift in the population out there that it would jump from 1,600 to 12,000. So there could be an abuse of the system going on here as to what actually constitutes a religious objection or religious exemption to it. I mean,
I just can't see any religion that them saying, like, their elders coming together and saying, the Lord has revealed unto us a prophecy that the Holy Land has been promised, and it is in Newark. Like,
I don't know. Well, just because they're religious doesn't mean that they're moving because of some imagined prophecy, even though I'm of the mind that all prophecies are imagined, or at the very least either unprovable because they're so vague they can apply to literally any point in time or situation, which doesn't even make it a prophecy anymore. It just makes it useless. Or they're just wrong. So, according to the CDC, or the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 86% of the more than 1,200 plus cases of measles reported this year were associated with under-immunized, close-knit communities, including 2 outbreaks in New York Orthodox Jewish communities, which resulted from religious exemptions. Now, again, that's New York. That's not New Jersey, even though, they are neighbors. So this could be just a shift between the two. But to me, this is starting to seem, like I was saying a moment ago, that this is some kind of abuse of the religious exemption option within New Jersey. And this could be due to poor wording. This could be due to nebulous legal lingo that allows just about anyone to claim a religious exemption. I mean, we've seen evidence of things like that in the past. Some even in Texas here and there. I'm trying to remember the exact bill, but there was something about not a religious exemption on something, or something about posting religious iconography. That it first made it where it was pretty much blatantly Christian, and it excluded others. No, this was North Carolina, and then eventually they were required to open it up to any other religion that wanted to pay for some sort of iconographic monument to be put out there. And I think that's when they got the statue of Baphomet out there or something. That was pretty interesting.
Was that South? Was that North Carolina, or was that Arkansas? Because I do remember a similar story. I think they were trying to put the Baphomet up in a few different states.
Right. I know they were. They were trying to put that up pretty much in any state government house that had some kind of regulation or had some kind of stipulation that allowed for, based on freedom of speech, religious iconography to be posted or displayed within a state or government building if it was privately funded. And that was the kind of loophole that they gave themselves. And then a group of Satanists, I can't remember if they were the actual Satanic Church or if they were LaVeyan Satanists. It really doesn't matter.
Well, it does matter, because there's a group that is primarily political, and it was that group. I can't remember the exact name of it.
Then I think that might be the LaVeyan Satanist. I think the
LaVeyan Satanist is more of like a humanistic club. There's a group that I can't remember the exact name of it, but like their primary goal is to go around and test First Amendment laws.
I mean, I kind of I like the idea, in all honesty. I mean, I personally don't care to what group, as far as if they're talking about religion or things like that, because I don't subscribe to any religion. But I find it kind of funny that groups like that exist to kind of not necessarily push the boundaries, but to see exactly. Say what?
Play devil's advocate.
Yeah, there you go. Play devil's advocate. Why not?
Yeah.
Personally, I wholeheartedly endorse that kind of political activity. Just in general, I mean, yeah, you've got the First Amendment. You've got the right to say pretty much what you want to say and when you want to say it, where you want to say it, and how you want to say it. Do it. You have the right. Exercise it. And if that makes a few people uncomfortable or gets people talking about what our rights are, or talking about just the government in general and sparking these political discussions, that's one of the best ways to kind of get things to where they need to be as far as this country goes, because without an open dialogue, you're not really going to have anything.
Yeah.
It's just going to be the government does what it wants, and then people vote just kind of out of muscle memory versus any kind of actual legitimate gripe or legitimate concern with the direction the country is going.
I think it might be the Satanic Temple.
I
think that's the group.
Might be.
Like
I'd have to look it up here after a while. So,
but I know that they're always trying to put their statue up everywhere, and then like the minute Netflix decided to put it in Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, they ended up suing Netflix.
Well, I mean, if it's a copyrighted image and they used it for profit, then yeah, that's the illegal use of copyrighted material. So, I mean, that's a justifiable legal complaint there.
It is. It's just kind of funny.
I do agree that it's funny, but at the same time, a lot of people, I guess, don't seem to understand the differences in context there, and that kind of is pretty important when you talk about those things. So, looking through, we actually do get some information about the history of things. Of course, there's the statement about, experiencing a measles outbreak. Of course, we don't want any state to have to declare a state of emergency based on something like that, especially given that the measles is something that we had all but eradicated from essentially this continent before this anti-vax movement just got to the ridiculous head that it came to. So, looking further, the U.S. Supreme Court made it clear in Prince v. Massachusetts, 1944, that the right to practice religion freely does not include liberty to expose the community or children to communicable disease, or the latter to ill health or death. In addition, neither New Jersey's Constitution nor laws require that public health and safety be subordinated by religious beliefs, no matter how sincerely held they may be. So I find myself in complete agreement with this. I mean, SCOTUS made it clear in the 40s that, yes, you have the right to practice your religion. That doesn't give you the right to endanger the health and well-being of other people, especially children.
Right. And I think what's important is that this law change, it's not actually saying, this is why I was saying it's kind of clickbait. It's not saying they're going to remove religious exemption for vaccinating your kids. They're saying that they're going to remove the religious exemption for sending your kids to school without vaccinations.
And that's fine. I mean, I don't know if it's entirely clickbait, because looking at the end religious exemption vaccination requirements. Okay, so I mean, like, it may not specifically reference school, but when it talks about vaccination requirements, I mean, the only requirements that I'm currently aware of when it comes to vaccination, especially as pertains to children, is via the attendance of public schools.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, if you want to use a public utility, so to speak, like the educational system that's funded by the taxpayers, then yes, you're required to adhere to those regulations that govern attendance. And if part of that is having your child vaccinated before they can attend to protect not only themselves, but everyone around them, and any children that may not be able to be vaccinated because they're immunocompromised, then if you don't want to vaccinate them, then they don't get to go to public schools. There are private schools, there are private institutions, and you have the homeschool option. If you want to be that diehard about it, don't nitpick over what we do in the public sector, in the public venue. Do it yourself. Accept the consequences that come with adherence to that.
I'm really curious what groups have resulted in that increase in use.
Well, they talk about New York, the New York Orthodox Jewish communities when it comes to the measles outbreak up there. It says 86% of the over 1,200 plus cases of measles reported were associated with under-immunized close-knit communities, including 2 outbreaks in New York Orthodox Jewish communities. So
that's like a really weird way to phrase that sentence. It's
that
like 80% of the cases were associated with close-knit communities, including 2 that were with Orthodox Jewish communities. Well, at what percentage is the 2 Orthodox Jewish communities actually out of the full 100% of measles cases? Because we're dealing with
that would be an interesting question to ask to find out an answer to at that point. Now, it looks like there's a hot link or a hyperlink in there, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that and see where it takes us. So this is the national update on measles cases and outbreaks, U.S., January 1st through October 1st of 2019. This was published October 11th of last year. So I'm going to go ahead and get this screen queued up.
I don't know. Like from my constantly cynical perspective, yes, the evangelical Christian is the cynic here.
I don't know.
Like, I'm just wondering, did the writer just look for an excuse to name a group? Because that doesn't really sound like it was.
I don't know. It could just be that. Okay, so here's a bit of the abstract here. So we're going to look at this big paragraph right here. So among the 1,249 measles cases reported in 2019, a little over 1,100, so 93% were associated with the 22 outbreaks overall.
Okay.
89% were patients who were unvaccinated or had an unknown vaccination status, and 10% measles patients were hospitalized. Closely related outbreaks in New York City and New York State, which would exclude New York City in that calculation, with ongoing transmission for nearly 1 year in large and close-knit Orthodox Jewish communities, accounted for 75% of the cases during 2019. So there's a legitimate reason for directly referencing them, because they're responsible for an overwhelming majority.
Now I see it. The way the sentence was originally written, it was like,
right. Initially, it sounds nebulous, like you're just trying to harp on one. But no, when you look at the actual CDC article from them, their updated report, they're responsible for 75% of all the cases during that 10-month cycle. So that's pretty severe. I mean, so it kind of makes you wonder, is there something in that community or in that geographic area that is making them either more susceptible, or is there some kind of underlying genetic factor with a close-knit religious community, so there's not as much genetic intermingling as there would be outside of that community?
No,
or could it just be some environmental factors? I mean, it could be all sorts of stuff. What's that?
Everyone in the community is not vaccinated, so as soon as one person,
true. So it's just So it's the culture. It's the cultural environmental factor of it. Is that if none of them are vaccinated, then it makes it incredibly easy to transmit.
So they said there's 11 major outbreaks, and 2 of them basically accounted for 75% of all the cases.
Yeah, and it's just from this one community in one city.
So then the other 9 outbreaks had less than 25% of infections, because they were probably in smaller communities.
Quite possibly. Or they were in, I guess, what I could call a kind of mixed community. And what I mean by that is that they don't just live in one geographic area or kind of purposefully sequester themselves to one particular geographic area of a town, and they're just intermingled with the rest of the population. So perhaps there was a bit of herd immunity going on that kind of prevented the further spread. You know, more vaccinated people in the area, basically.
Yeah.
And so looking a little further into this, so a total of basically 1,250 measles cases were reported in 31 states and New York City, 97% of them among U.S. residents. The median patient age was 6 years old. So we know that children are more susceptible to measles, mumps, and rubella. 13% were infants aged less than 12 months, not routinely recommended to receive an MMR vaccine. And 31% were aged 1 to 4 years. 27% were school-aged children between 5 and 17. And then 29% were adults 18 years or older. Among all the patients, 89% were unvaccinated or status unknown, and 11% had received greater than one MMR vaccination.
So there's two basic things that we're looking at. And one is the statistical analysis of the people who have contracted measles and whether or not they were vaccinated.
Right.
The other side of the coin that I'm also interested in is the people claiming religious exemption within the state of New Jersey. And that's the part that we're not able to find information. Like not only what religious groups claim exemption, but why such a rapid increase in a few number of years? Like, was there a nation that popped up? Was there an immigration concern where there's a lot of refugees that flooded to New Jersey? Was there just an increase in anti-vax? And as you were saying, people are abusing the system because they're like, well, I'm going to come up with a religious exemption.
I think, in all honesty, I think a lot of it has to do, and this is going to just be speculation because as of right now, there's no evidence to back this, or at least there's not any that I've found. I can only make a little bit of conjecture based on what information I've seen thus far. And that is, it's talking about this rapid increase, 1,600 cases of religious exemption going back about a decade to now about 12,000. Apparently my cat wants to be vocal today.
You should bring her out.
Oh, no, she doesn't like the camera.
No.
She just likes to basically sunbathe on the back of an old chair.
Mm.
Then every once in a while, she just talks to the wall. Like right now. So anyway, back to what I was saying. Half tempted to grab the Nerf gun.
That's why I keep this.
See, no, that doesn't work on Mystery. You can hit her with the squirt bottle and she'll just sit there and try to drink it. It's the weirdest thing. But cock that Nerf gun. She's like, nope, I'm out of here. So, Anyways, so like I said, the conjecture I'm going to make is in a decade or so, we go from 1,600 cases of religious exemption to 12,000 plus. And this is at the end of 2019. So you look at technology to a certain extent. YouTube first kind of started being a thing around 2006, 2007. It doesn't really start reaching a lot of prominence or wide-scale acceptance until about 2009. So if we're looking at this from a decade perspective, 2009 is when we start getting fast enough, like really fast internet, up to the broadband speeds we're seeing today. And so more and more people have internet at home. More and more people have slowly but surely kind of migrated away from traditional media to alternative media outlets like YouTube and Facebook over time. And one of the largest adopters of YouTube at the time when it first came out was people debating back and forth. Like first it was like, game videos and let's plays and stuff like that. But this is when you started seeing a lot of philosophical discussion and things of that nature start to crop up. And then we start moving away from these specific streaming websites or these specific websites that are built around something like cinemassacre.com with the angry video game nerd. Started out there, migrated to YouTube. And then you have, of course, we got to bring up Alex Jones a little bit with his whole, what was it? It's Prison Planet, I think is his website. Or it could just be InfoWars now. I don't remember. I think it was Prison Planet when it first started out. Anyway. And that's when you start seeing the conspiracy stuff come out a lot heavier. And then you get into the naturopathic medicine stuff, which that's kind of jumped up again along with homeopathy. And that just kind of goes hand in hand with anti-vax culture. And, now we've got people like that nut job, the Health Ranger, or Mike the Health Ranger, whatever the hell his name is, just constantly espousing crap and pretending that it's science. Or these people like Del Bigtree. And of all things, Del Bigtree did something just utterly horrible either a year or 2 years ago, where he was giving a speech to the Orthodox Jewish community, I think, of New York, in which he said that as anti-vaxxers, they stand with you. And he takes out this, poorly cut out fabric Star of David and pins it to his suit jacket at the rally, trying to play up to the Jewish community that being anti-vax is somehow equivalent to being persecuted in the Holocaust. Like, if that's not some trashy propagandist junk, I don't know what is.
Yeah. I mean, people will appeal to the lowest common denominator, and I hate whenever people try to take advantage of groups by showing some kind of solidarity whenever they're basically patronizing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's kind of the story of what we're looking at here is basically, if you're going to send your kids to public school in New Jersey, they need to be vaccinated. If you don't want to vaccinate them, they're not going to, arrest you. They're just going to say you're in public school.
Right. Your child cannot attend public school. So, moral of the story is vaccinate your crotch goblins and then they can go to school.
And the untold story is, why did New Jersey get so religious?
Yeah. I mean, there, like we brought up, there are 3 potential key factors. One is just a flux in population demographic, which is possible.
I like how you indirectly blamed Alex Jones for New Jersey becoming more religious.
How so?
Well, you're talking about the rise of InfoWars and Prison Planet.
Well, because they've been one of the biggest proponents of anti-vax material and this homeopathy crap. Like their total male BS. It's really friggin' stupid. Or Brain Force X, these different supplements and crap like that, which some of which were found to have not necessarily toxic, but high instances of lead being in the supplement.
But if that's the cause, then the measurement of which we're using is more people using religious deferments in New Jersey, then that would mean that in some way you're saying that Alex Jones has led more people to God?
No, not necessarily. More that propaganda akin to Alex Jones from people like him, like Del Bigtree, like Mike the Health Ranger, like
I don't know who
insert
this
any other anti-vax YouTuber here. Hell, insert Andrew Flippin Wakefield himself. And some of those, and those two bullshit documentaries he's released, Vaxxed and Vaxxed 2, in which he really doesn't do anything more than make sweeping emotional appeals and rely heavily on VAERS, even though VAERS is an incredibly imperfect system that doesn't actually investigate the injuries, the vaccine injuries, and determine to what degree the vaccine may or may not have been responsible. Because there's crap reported to VAERS that wouldn't have anything to do with the vaccination.
Yeah.
Because it's a self-reporting system.
Arthy, so you know a lot more of them than I do.
What they rely on is viral marketing more than anything else. They release these insane videos, and it looks like we just lost Harry there for a minute, but I'll keep going. They release these insane videos, and they talk about 9 kinds of crap. You all right there, man? What happened?
My browser was messing up. I had to restart it.
Okay, no worries. But yeah, these just anti-vax propagandists, they talk 9 kinds of crap, make sweeping emotional appeals, and do everything they can to get people on their side using bad science, pseudoscience, and outright friggin' lies as methods of furthering their crap. But anyways, I suppose we should probably get back to the rest of that one article. So we'll see how that goes. So in looking further at it, that's where we left off. We've got the actual email that they sent asking them to amend NJS 2173, referencing the separation of church and state. And if anyone's interested in reading this, please go ahead and go click on the link down below and scroll down to it. There's this PDF of it, and they actually go through and cite their sources to it. So that's a hell of a lot better than the majority of anti-vaxxers. So yeah, but as of now, the companion bill to S2173 in the General Assembly was amended in January 2019 to remove religious exemptions. And so that needs to happen. That's a definite thing. And that should stay.
What other exemptions exist?
That's a good question. Wait, we have a hyperlink to the number of these exemptions increased to more than 12,000. So let's take a look and see what we got here. It's a New York Times article, so I'm just going to kind of give a quick scroll through here and see.
If it's just stats, it's not like they can really mess that up.
True, but a lot of this is talking about it's a reprint of looks like it's a reprint of an article from the Columbian. No, not a reprint. Okay, so talking about some stuff from a couple of legislators, even in New York, where 80% of the nation's measles cases are concentrated, angry parents shouted and heckled from the assembly gallery after the vote was called. Several politicians had misgivings about scrapping religious exemptions. The chairman of the Health Committee, Richard Gottfried, voted against the bill, which barely passed the assembly, but Governor Andrew Cuomo, who had initially expressed reservations, signed it immediately. Talking about opponents describing tighter laws as an assault on their parental rights and religious freedom. No, it isn't.
This is New York again, isn't it? Because if it's
Yeah,
younger age,
this is New York again. But because New York and New Jersey are right next to each other, I think there's a lot of bleed over between the two. And it could be that because something like this passed in New York, we saw an increase in these religious exemptions being claimed in New Jersey.
that makes sense. People moved over the border, went to New Jersey so they could get their exemptions.
I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like to me. Like in 2015, California eliminated non-medical exemptions to vaccines, and that was after about 160 visitors to Disneyland ended up being infected with measles. So now, with 51 residents infected this year, state lawmakers are mulling a bill to rein in what critics have called bogus medical exemptions authorized by unscrupulous physicians. Though most of those sickened with measles were actually adults. If the California bill passes, parents will have a much harder time obtaining a medical exemption for their child. Applications for medical exemptions would require approval by the state health department, which must conform to guidelines drawn up by the CDC and the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. And I'm actually going to share this screen so we can kind of go through what some of these exemptions listed are, or what would fall in line with those. Let's see. Here we go. Make sure everything's showing up. Yep, there we go. The guidelines lay out fairly narrow medical reasons to justify foregoing vaccinations. A child who went into a coma after a pertussis vaccine would be exempt from another pertussis shot, for example. But a child who had seizures for 3 days would not qualify for an exemption.
Well, then, you went into a coma. We're not going to do it again.
But you can have seizures for 3 days and you don't qualify for an exemption. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's probably more to it than that. There's got to be. Okay, so here's the guidelines right here.
Do you remember Backward Walking Girl?
Vaguely.
She got a flu shot and said that now she can only walk backwards.
Oh yeah, that nonsense.
And then they caught her at Target and they're
walking
hey.
forward.
She just stopped and started walking backward.
Golly.
Oh.
But yeah, they've got a whole line out of things here, and I'll probably include a link to this in the description below later on. But this is from the CDC, and it's vaccine recommendations and guidelines of the AKIP, which AKIP is the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. So, California Governor Gavin Newsom expressed concern about government officials making decisions traditionally left to parents and physicians, although he did say he would not. He did not say he would veto the bill. He says he believes in immunizations, but he does legitimately have concerns about a bureaucrat making a decision that is very personal. And to a degree, I can kind of understand that, especially when you're making such narrow distinctions as 3 days worth of seizures after receiving a vaccination would not be considered an exemptive symptom, but going into a coma would be. Both seem to be pretty extreme neurological affectations, but again, it would have to be seen on a case-by-case basis with some type of physician, treating the child or observing them to kind of see what could be a potential underlying factor that caused those things, and if it actually was something aggravated by the vaccination. So I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that could go.
So I got a Bible verse that's relevant.
Okay, let's hear it.
In the Apocrypha, though, so that's probably why most anti-vaxxers haven't read it.
Yeah, because that's a very Catholic That's a very Catholic thing.
Sirach 38:4. The Lord created medicines out of the earth, and the sensible will not despise them. Yeah.
I guess that's why you don't have many, if any, Catholic anti-vaxxers.
Says it there. The sensible will not despise them.
Right. Well, there you go. I guess that their holy book is clearly telling them that they are being unsensible.
Yep.
All right. Well, looks like they no longer have a religious excuse to deny their child a potentially life-saving vaccination. But I do kind of see where some of the stigma comes with from anti-vaxxers is that there's no immediate result from a vaccine. If a vaccine works to 100% efficiency for a patient, nothing happens. Nothing ever happens in regards to those diseases. So, and I know that human beings, or at least we've seen that human beings are very visual in a lot of ways. If we do something, we want to be able to physically see the result from that. And just not seeing something happen, I guess, for at least when it comes to anti-vaxxers, isn't enough. I don't see why. I can see this as a potential reason behind it, at least from maybe a psychological standpoint. But overall, no, there's no excuse for not vaccinating your children. You want them in public school, vaccinate them. Period. So I guess at this point, we've beaten this one to death. So we should probably move on to, I don't know, you want to do the Department of Education proposal or we want to do the fake news one?
Let's go and do the fake news one.
Fake news? All right. Fake news, here we come.
And what I was referring to is like in the first, I think, paragraph or so, whenever I mentioned it's a 700-year-old fake news article.
Okay. Yeah, 628 or something like that.
Yeah.
Let's see here. All right, here we go. Yep, 628-year-old fake news. Scientists prove Turin Shroud not genuine again. Forensic analysis of possible bloodstains suggests marks could only have been made by someone adopting different poses, not dead Messiah lying still in tomb before the resurrection. Maybe he tossed and turned in his sleep. Who knows?
But theologically, yes, was in the process of resurrection. He would have taken different poses.
Would he? Would he now?
That. I've got a bigger problem with this whole article, but we'll keep going.
All right. So the Turin Shroud is a fake. That is the verdict of Catholic Bishop Pierre de Arcis, or Arcus, I don't know. Bad at pronouncing French words and names, so don't get mad at me. Who has written to tell the Pope it was a clever sleight of hand by someone falsely declaring this was the actual shroud in which Jesus was enfolded in the tomb to attract the multitude so that money might cunningly be wrung from them. Admittedly, since that bishop was writing in the 14th century, the year 1390, to Pope Clement VII, rather than at the time Pope Francis, this is not exactly new news.
Yeah.
But since some have refused to believe the bishop's findings, or the 1988 carbon dating showing the shroud was from the medieval, not the biblical era, or the subsequent debunking of claims disputing the carbon dating, scientists today are still studying the Turin Shroud. And they are still concluding it's fake. In the latest, but almost certainly not final installment.
Studies.
What?
Who is paying for these studies?
Apparently Liverpool John Moores University. And the University of Pavia. So
they got bigger problems with Brexit coming up than like studying some old piece of cloth.
I mean, yeah. But there again, what is a forensic scientist going to do when it comes to when it comes to dealing with Brexit.
More than studying the Shroud of Turin.
In the latest, but almost certainly not final installment, they have used modern forensic techniques to show that apparent blood spatters on the shroud could only have been produced by someone moving to adopt different poses rather than lying still in the manner of a dead and yet to be resurrected Messiah. Then, of course, we have a couple of forensic scientists, Dr. Matteo Barini from Liverpool John Moores and Luigi Garlascelli, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, of the University of Pavia, used a living volunteer and real and synthetic blood to try to simulate possible ways that the apparent bloodstains could have got onto the shroud. So, and they go through into a fairly excruciating detail, and let's see.
There's so much of this that is so dumb. The number one thing I'm thinking is, okay, so let's look at it from an evangelical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus rose from the dead. He didn't just like Scooby-Doo ghosts and like straight up stand without moving. His body came back to life, so of course he would move around. This proves nothing. Second of all, they wrapped him and then took him off of the cross and then continued to like wrap him whenever they were like he was moving all over the place. Like that doesn't prove anything. Third of all, it's already been disproven so much. We know that the Shroud of Turin is not the actual burial cloth.
Like, I mean, considering that they called it in the 14th century, well, no, I'm not going to say I'm surprised this crap still exists today and that people still claim it as somehow evidence of yada, 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 yada bullshit, because we've still got people talking about Thomas Aquinas and his arguments for the existence of God, which rely upon Aristotelian physics, which have been proven wrong since at least the time of Isaac Newton, probably even further back to the time of Galileo and Copernicus.
Yeah, I'm admittedly a little sick right now, so I didn't follow all of that, but I can't get over the fact that a Catholic bishop was like, "Hey, Pope, there's some people out here scamming,
right?
Fabric. What do you want to do about it?" And 700 years later, people are still scamming taxpayers by studying.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's so ridiculous. But it looks like we've got some information apparently from a writing of the Pope himself. No, not from the Pope, but still from Bishop DRC or Darcy. I don't know. It's fair to say that when the bishop wrote about the shroud still being used as a money spinner in 1390, he was a bit angry. He says, "I cannot fully or sufficiently express in writing the grievous nature of the scandal. The dean of a certain collegiate church, to wit, that of Leary, falsely and deceitfully being consumed with the passion of avarice, and not from any motive of devotion, but only of gain, procured for his church a certain cloth upon which, by a clever sleight of hand, was depicted the twofold image of one man, and further, to attract the multitude so that money might cunningly be wrung from them, pretended miracles were worked, certain men being hired to represent themselves as healed at the moment of the exhibition of the shroud." So even in that time, that bishop was telling Pope Clement, medieval experts were debunking the claims being made about the shroud. Why is this still a thing?
Like, the Catholic Church was like, "Listen, we got to stop this."
I know, it's like, why is this still a thing? But granted, this was also during a time when the sale of indulgences was rampant within the Catholic Church.
And I got the feeling that maybe this bishop that wrote the letter was on the outside of that group, because he seems really upset about this. And I feel letter, he was probably like, "Yo, this is kind of the status quo for now. Wait a couple hundred years."
Yeah, but it's like, based on the lingo being used here, like, This bishop is pissed off. I mean, that's some pretty severe 14th century shade being thrown right there.
Yeah, I would be pretty angry, and I can see why he's angry. And oh my gosh, just let
Yeah.
the shroud rest in peace.
Even when I was a Catholic, I thought the whole Shroud of Turin thing was nonsense. And this was before I even knew half of this information here. Like, Bishop recalled that during Henry of Poitiers' investigation, many theologians and otherwise persons declared that this could not be the real shroud of our Lord, having the Savior's likeness thus imprinted upon it, since the Holy Gospel made no mention of any such imprint, while, if it had been true, it was quite unlikely that the holy evangelists would have omitted to record it, or that the fact should have remained hidden until the present time. Although some modern commentators apparently are just like hand-wavingly dismissing the bishop's comments as nothing more than jealousy and synthetic outrage. What the crap? They say he just wanted to discredit the shroud so all those free-spending pilgrims would visit his cathedral at Troyes rather than the church at Leary.
And do what?
Apparently donate money there instead of at Leary. I don't know.
Did he have like another competing relic of the time?
Not to anything that I see here.
This is why I'm Baptist. Number one, right here. You know what relics are?
Oh my gosh. Wow. No. This gets even better. The Turin Shroud Center of Colorado. There's an entire center in Colorado devoted to this.
Because that's the most logical place in the world for the Shroud of Turin Center.
Hey, I'm pretty sure that this place existed before recreational weed was legalized there, so you can't blame it on that.
It's from the Shroud of Turin's visits to Native Americans.
Oh. Suggested carbon monoxide could have altered the shroud's radiocarbon age to make it seem much younger. It was, however, pointed out that this would have required unnatural concentrations of a gas that doesn't normally react with linen, and that no such contamination has ever been observed. So, this is like saying that dinosaurs weren't real and that the fossils were put down by God to test us.
Or like saying that whenever Jesus died, he spent 3 days riding around in his El Camino.
I mean, Jesus Christ Superstar. This is like
carbon monoxide, really?
Yeah, like in all honesty, there's only one way I can kind of describe this: weaponized stupidity. Like, this is weapons grade stupid.
Let me say something,
please,
from a Christian perspective here.
Go for it, man.
God doesn't need you to defend him. If God is omnipotent, he's doing good enough on his own without you having to fight his battles for him.
Then why are there all these apologists? And some of them seemingly of the Baptist camp, like, William Lane Craig.
I'm not familiar with that guy.
He's been around for a long time.
I read this. This is pretty much all. Solo Scriptura, man.
But yeah.
All that God needs is for you to try to live the way that is good, and to try to show other people love and caring, and try to look after your fellow humans. And that maybe by doing that, other people who would normally be full of selfish and greed and just a life of terribleness will be like, man, maybe I need to try to do good for other people too. And maybe I need to try to, do what this guy's doing. And then they'll start reading the Bible and learning from your example. That's all we can do, is try to live a life of love and show that love to others. And then hopefully through our actions, convert others. But there's none of this sitting around trying to find 700-year-old pieces of fabric, trying to prove that God exists, for all those super intelligent atheists that just won't figure it out. But if I take these pieces of fiber and I prove that they're radioactive, then that's going to flip the switch, and that person's just going to be like, oh my gosh, instead of donating extra money to charity because I don't believe in God, now I'm going to start donating extra money to charity because I do believe in God. Like, you got to pick your battle.
That's kind of a funny thing, though, is that per capita atheists donate more to charities than theistic individuals.
Yeah, and that's not a mind that I'm trying to change right now.
Yeah.
Like, if you're good, whatever, man. The people that need to change are the people that they hadn't got it figured out. They don't know what they're doing. I'm not going to go up to someone that thinks they got everything solved and change their mind on life. They're doing good enough. I'm not going to be able to change their mind. The people that need the help are the people I need to be focusing on.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I just find that kind of stuff kind of humorous to an extent, except for crap like this. Like I said, this is weapons grade dumb.
It's wasteful. It's terrible. It's
a waste of money. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of. This is a waste of digital media at this point. In all honesty, I mean, but the biggest reason I brought it up was because it is such a waste, and because this is something that is representative of a bad idea that should be consistently and constantly ridiculed and laughed at until they stop talking about it.
But they're going to get clicks, and they're going to keep printing these articles so that they can get more tax money.
They are. I mean, it's like what we were talking about with the parting of the Red Sea and like the Department of or the Ministry of Antiquity or whatever with Egypt from worldnewsdailyreport.com talking about chariot chunks being found at the bottom of the Red Sea.
No, this is different, because that was a humor article written by people who are trying to entertain people and try to do something like a little bit weird, but they weren't taking tax money at the University of Liverpool to research.
True. I agree with you on that one, but it's gotten to the point where, I mean, this is one of the reasons why Poe's law exists, is that the position or actual adherence to positions have become so extreme in what they talk about, so extreme in how they present certain aspects of their talking points, that you can no longer tell them apart from someone who's bullshitting just for fun.
Well, my religious opinion is that this is arrogance, this is materialism, and it's iconography, and I'm out.
Catholics are all about iconography, man. Well, Eastern Orthodoxy is too. Well, actually, most world religions are all about iconography to a certain degree.
I mean, I don't mind statues and stuff for the right purpose, but what I'm not okay with is worshiping the image.
True. Well, this isn't saying that it's being worshipped or anything like that, but I mean, Catholicism does have a pretty sordid history with worshiping objects.
I'm pretty sure that bishop was explicitly stating that people were going there to worship it.
True, but that's in the 14th century. I'm talking about today.
There's probably some people that are still worshiping.
There probably are. I mean, it's at least likely as not. It's at least a 50-50 split as to, are there people worshiping this debunked chunk of burlap, or are there not?
Yeah.
It's at least a 50-50 split. So I guess now we're going to go ahead and move on to the Department of Education proposal. Now, first, we're going to look at the article from American Atheists, and then if we see some things that kind of like spark a little bit of controversy or disagreement, we're also going to try and pull up the text of the legislation itself to kind of jump into that a little bit. It's a little bit different from what we normally do, but we're going to try and take a look at it. All right, let's get everything set up. So, did you do anything fun for New Year's, Harry, while I'm getting all this going?
No, I've been sick.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, but I'm doing a faith healing regimen of
Faith healing regimen. Okay.
yeah, only things that God has provided. So I'm praying, drinking lots of water, and
Robitussin and Sudafed.
penicillin. I'm staying away from the Sudafed.
Okay.
That's the devil's candy. I will not partake.
Sudafed
God
is the
bread.
devil's candy. Okay.
I don't need any stimulants. I don't need your over-the-counter meth. Thank you very much, Walmart.
No. It's not over the counter meth. It is a component in amphetamine production.
You know, it's
I actually have a background in at least for a professional background in studying a little bit of the chemical composition of narcotics.
but all it takes is for me to also eat a battery and do a couple of cartwheels, and it would make meth in my stomach.
That's true. If I don't know,
That's a
coagulated.
step I don't take. I don't need to take the Sudafed and then be tempted with the compulsion
to
eat
somehow
battery.
just like choke down a AA battery.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you would die from some sort of toxicity from the battery before it made meth in your stomach.
But it's a step I don't need.
Oh, of course, yes. Wouldn't want you to be so tempted as to take that crucial step.
Yeah, no, I don't have any congestion in my nose or anything. It's like a
Chest.
respiratory infection.
Okay. Well, if you're coughing crap up, I've found that Mucinex works wonders, at least for me.
I am taking lots of Mucinex.
There you go. See, people, modern medicine is good. It helps you. But just like everything else, you have to follow the instructions that are on the packaging.
Oh, what's the verse that we were looking at earlier? There's another part of it that I didn't read.
Something out of Zurich.
Yeah. Honor physicians for their services, for the Lord created them. For their gift of healing comes from the Most High, and they are rewarded by the King.
Yeah. Okay, so apparently doctors have the divine right to practice?
Well, you're better off listening to what they say, second guessing them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for the most part, I would agree with that to a certain extent. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this Department of Education proposal here. And close those out.
Just the middle of someone's sick, doing cartwheels after each battery.
Yeah, because that's totally a thing. Totally a thing. The Department of Education proposes to subsidize religious proselytizing. Okay. Pretty acerbic headline there, but let's take a look at it. So today, American atheists denounced the Trump administration's proposal to subsidize religious organizations using Department of Education student aid programs. Under the new rule, the federal government would unconstitutionally support the efforts of religious organizations not just to provide services, but also to worship and proselytize. So, quote from Allison Gill, the VP for Legal and Policy for American Atheists, says the federal government should not be in the business of providing resources to encourage religious education, worship, or proselytizing by religious organizations. Okay, if that is indeed the case, if that's what they're doing, I agree with Allison Gill.
It's not exactly what they're doing, but okay.
Right. That's why I use that all-important giant two-letter word of if. If it's good enough for the Spartans, it's good enough for me. In July of this year, American atheists submitted comments opposing proposed religious exemptions for higher education, noting that they would allow colleges and universities to implement discriminatory policies and practices. The Department of Education... What?
May I pause there?
Sure. Well, let me get this next paragraph out to show like what their supporting information is there, and then we can jump more into it, okay?
Okay.
In fact, in all honesty, this article is almost over, so let's just go ahead and finish it out, and then we'll get into the objections, okay?
Okay.
The Department of Education relied on the 2017 Supreme Court case Trinity Lutheran v. Comer, which determined that a church was entitled to state funding to pave its playground as the basis for this new rule. Gill adds that this administration has bent over backwards to distort a wrongly decided Supreme Court case to justify more handouts, exemptions, and giveaways to their backers on the religious right. This isn't complicated. Public dollars must be used in ways that are constitutional, not to support inherently religious activities. This is exactly the sort of harm our founders created the Establishment Clause to protect against, taxpayers being forced to pay for the religious education of those of differing beliefs. Thomas Jefferson correctly called this tyranny, and now this administration seeks to roll back 200 years of constitutional protections. Now that comes from the president of American Atheists, Nick Fish. All right, so let's go ahead and get into your objections. And while you're doing that, I'm going to pull up that Facebook message you sent me that has the link to the full text of the legislation or the proposal that you sent me earlier.
Yeah. So when we're talking about July of last year, what we're talking about is that was still at a point when before the impeachment really started rolling.
Right. This is July of 2018.
So we're talking about 2018, actually.
Right, because like this article came out at the end of December, and this one here, where is it at?
This is right in the middle of the
No, July of this year. So no, this is 2019. Excuse me.
Okay. So this would have been shortly after the heyday then, but it still would have been before impeachment. Whenever people complaining about Betsy DeVos was still like a high, it was still a hot take.
Yeah. Well, they were complaining about her 2016, 2017, and that's when Trinity Lutheran v. Comer was decided.
Yeah. Now,
so I think this is even before Kavanaugh was confirmed.
If I'm thinking Trinity Lutheran, if I'm thinking of it correctly, this whole case was about a playground that was going to get refurnished so that it had a safe covering for the kids to play with because neighborhood kids use the playground.
Right, but at the same time, it does kind of open up to potential abuses of the decision, like what seems to be being referenced in the article we were just looking at, basically saying that ruled that churches and other houses of worship are entitled to state funding.
If they are entitled to state funding to cover a good or a service that is not specifically religious based, that serves the greater community good, such as a publicly accessible playground for kids that would not otherwise have a playground, and to make it safe and usable.
Okay.
So we're not saying that because I have a playground, you're now going to cover the cost of my new hymnals. We're saying because I have a playground, you're going to help me renovate it so that it is better and safer for the community.
Right.
So it's narrowly tailored.
And I'm looking at the syllabus from it right now.
Yeah.
From the court case. So
I think that's the same case, but it might be a different one. I didn't go back and look at the case.
No, so looking at this, Trinity Lutheran Church Child Learning Center is a Missouri preschool and daycare center. Originally established as a nonprofit organization, the center later merged with Trinity Lutheran Church and now operates under its auspices on church property. Among the facilities at the center is a playground, which has a coarse pea gravel surface beneath much of the play equipment. In 2012, the center sought to replace a large portion of the pea gravel with a pour-in-place rubber surface by participating in Missouri's scrap tire program. The program, run by the state's Department of Natural Resources, offers reimbursement grants for qualifying nonprofit organizations that install playground surfaces made from recycled tires. The department had a strict and express policy of denying grants to any applicant owned or controlled by a church, sect, or other religious entity. Pursuant to that policy, the department denied the center's application. In a letter rejecting that application, the department explained that under Article 1, Section 7 of the Missouri Constitution, the department could not provide financial assistance directly to a church. The department ultimately awarded 14 grants as part of the 2012 program. Although the center ranked 5th out of the 44 applicants, it did not receive a grant because it is a church. Trinity Lutheran sued in federal district court, alleging that the department's failure to approve its application violated the free exercise clause of the First Amendment. The district court dismissed the suit. The free exercise clause, the court stated, prohibits the government from outlawing or restricting the exercise of a religious practice, but it generally does not prohibit the withholding of an affirmative benefit on account of religion. And the district court likened the case before it to Locke v. Davie, where the court upheld against a free exercise challenge to a state's decision to not fund degrees in devotional theology as part of a scholarship program. And so that's what that's coming from.
So we're talking about a preschool.
True, but it is a church-run preschool.
And depending upon where you're from, the size of the city, if you're in a larger city, that may not make a lot of sense. But if you're in a smaller city, that's something that's pretty common because a lot of times churches aren't using their facilities Monday through Friday.
Right. So they sponsor a Mother's Day Out program or something to that effect as kind of a way to give back to the community. And I get that. So it looks like what was held is that the department's policy violated the rights of Trinity Lutheran under the free exercise clause of the First Amendment by denying the church an otherwise available public benefit on account of its religious status. So in that regard, I actually tend to agree with the decision from the Supreme Court, because it looks like, at least in how the letter seems to have been worded based on the description from SCOTUS, is that they were denied participation in the program expressly because they're a religious organization.
Yeah.
If it was otherwise publicly available funding or a publicly available grant based on that, then I can kind of see where that could fall under religious discrimination. But at the same time, I have a bit of a disagreement with it in that I feel that it would most likely be considered religious discrimination if and only if another religious organization did receive funding based on that, and that they were denied expressly because of their particular religion. That's the way I kind of see religious discrimination. It's the favoring of one over others. And with it being a sweeping denial to all religious organizations, I don't see where any discrimination took place or any violation of the free exercise clause. Now that's from a lay perspective. I mean, yes, I do study law because I'm working towards becoming a lawyer, but that's the way I kind of see things, because that's how we routinely see discrimination described in both a political and a legal sense.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a bit of an overstep by SCOTUS to that degree, with looking at the narrow legal definition of discrimination or of violation of free exercise. I would have to dissent from the SCOTUS decision on that one. I don't agree with it.
Well, the thing is that it was their identity as religious which is what excluded them from being considered and having their application reviewed.
Right. But at the same time, it can be justified under the Establishment Clause. If they approved them, but not other churches, and the only justification they provided for it was something like availability of funds, it could then be argued that they're in violation of the Establishment Clause by approving this one religious organization over other religious organizations.
Yeah.
And then if they started accepting all the other religious organizations so as not to be seen as violating the Establishment Clause, well, then they're still violating the Establishment Clause because they're endorsing a religious organization and approving them while denying other secular organizations. So it's really a no-win situation no matter which way you look at it.
You would have to look at the number of people that were affected by the regrounding of the preschool playground to determine what the greater public good is.
Yeah, I could agree. I could agree with you on that one. But based on just the limited amount of information that I can see from the decision brief, I disagree with the decision. But there again, we weren't there to sit there and listen to however much testimony was being presented to support the legal question being put forth to the court. So,
my bigger question is, I think that the way that the case is represented in the article is misrepresentative.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm not sure it's entirely misrepresentative when you look at it.
How do they refer to the Trinity Lutheran case in the original article?
In the original article, that we started with, it says the Department of Education relied on the 2017 Supreme Court case Trinity Lutheran v. Comer, which determined that a church was entitled to state funding to pave its playground as a basis for this new rule that's being proposed in the Federal Register.
But it wasn't really the church's playground. It was the preschool.
The preschool is owned and operated by the church. It is the church.
But it's not a playground for a church. It's a playground for a preschool.
That is owned by a church. It's it's on church property. Therefore, it is for a church.
The reason it's misrepresentative is because a church playground is for use by the church and its parishioners.
Not necessarily. No. There are tons of publicly available or public access church playgrounds. I can reference at least 3 off the top of my head in my hometown of Longview, Texas.
Yeah.
But when the way they refer to it is, it's not misrepresentative. The church was entitled to state funding to pave its playground. The playground is on church property, yes?
So if we look at it,
it is a church playground.
If we look at it in that way, there are ways that we could justify the wording as being accurate. My impression when I read it is that it was referring to a church playground and not necessarily an openly accessible preschool playground that exists on a church, that a church has ownership of.
But still, at the same time, most preschool playgrounds are not open to the public.
But you don't have to be a particular religion to attend them unless it's a religious-based education system.
It's owned by a church, so I would say without further information on it, there could be some kind of stipulation in place that either you or a relative must be a member of TLC to have a child attend the TLC Child Learning Center.
And that's one of the things that I remember from the case is that it was open to the general public. Anyone in the neighborhood could attend.
Okay. And that's all well and good. And if they had still been, and based on what I'm looking at, or what I was looking at there, is had they not been owned by the church and they were still operating as just a nonprofit, they would have been eligible. So, I mean, I don't know. I still find myself disagreeing with SCOTUS with SCOTUS on this one, at least based on the amount of information I've been able to consume on the subject. So
Yeah.
back to the task at hand, looking at this Department of Ed proposal. So as with everything with the federal government, it's got a long, drawn out, and obnoxious title. All of that one giant run on, that comma splice from hell, is a title. Federal Perkins Loan Program, Federal Work Study Programs, Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant Program, Federal Family Education Loan Program, William D. Ford Federal Direct Loan Program, Teacher Education Assistance for College and Higher Education Grant Program, Federal Pell Grant Program, Leveraging Educational Assistance Partnership Program, and Gaining Early Awareness and Readiness for Undergraduate Programs. A proposed rule by the Education Department on 12/11/2019. Hooray, titles. Oy. So, looking at things, okay, looking at the summary. So for those of you, this is like an abstract for an academic paper. In response to the U.S. Supreme Court decision in Trinity Lutheran Church of Columbia, Inc. versus Comer, and the U.S. Attorney General's October 7th, 2017 memo on federal law protections for religious liberty pursuant to Executive Order number 13798. The Department of Education proposes revising the current regulations regarding the eligibility of faith-based entities to participate in the federal student aid programs authorized under Title IV of the Higher Education Act of 1965, as amended, and the eligibility of students to obtain certain benefits under those programs. The Education Secretary is also proposing to simplify the Teacher Education Assistance for College and Higher Education, or TEACH grant program requirements to minimize the number of TEACH grants that are converted to federal direct unsubsidized loans, and to update, strengthen, and clarify other areas of the TEACH grant program regulations. Okay, so, I'm kind of on board with minimizing the number of grants that get converted into unsubsidized loans. Okay, I'm cool with that, but it seems as though that, just like with every other rule proposal or piece of legislation that we see, is they're putting a piece of lettuce in a shit sandwich.
Not in this case.
I don't know.
This is a lettuce sandwich, and it has a couple of pieces of red cabbage in there, which some people are convinced tastes like poo.
I don't know.
They got the actual rules down there that are listed out, so you can see
Right,
exactly.
I'm looking at the purpose of this regulatory action, so let's go
Basically,
with.
the big thing is that if someone is a member of certain religions where they are basically considered to be working with that church and group, it would have invalidated them from being able to have the loan. And then the parts that are kind of quasi questionable is that if you're doing like volunteer work, it defers or it delays you having to pay back your loans for some time.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I mean, they already have stuff, other parts or other practices like that in place. I think on a state level in Texas or something like that, where if you work at what's referred to as a chronically underprivileged school, for a certain amount of time, like, it either wipes away your entire student loan debt, or it just cuts a huge chunk out of it.
Well, I'm describing the current system for those that don't know.
Okay.
So exactly what you're describing. And they're considering that if you're working with a charity and part of your work is quote unquote proselytizing, like either working at a soup kitchen or doing some other work for the organization or church, that also is considered volunteer as long as you're not getting paid for it.
Okay.
And that's the part that a lot of people are upset about. Because if you're paying someone, if someone's volunteering their time to proselytize, but they're getting a deferment on their loans for that volunteer work, does that equate to the government paying for proselytization? And ultimately what the rule is saying is the person's doing work without getting paid for something that's considered a charity or a nonprofit. It doesn't really matter what it is they're doing, as long as they don't get paid for it and we can give them some kind of credit off of their stupid loan.
See, I can agree to that to a certain extent. I suppose that one issue that I have overall are some of the proposed changes, like
Everyone wants to talk about student loan forgiveness, but as soon as someone starts talking about a way to expand it, everyone's like, oh no.
I suppose they want it expanded in the way they want it expanded, so I don't know.
I mean, and this isn't as flat out forgiveness. This is saying if you do some work,
we're deferring your requirement to pay it back.
Yeah, we're going to either defer it to later or we're going to forgive some of it, a percentage, but it's not just straight out, you get it forgiven for doing nothing. And that's what a lot of people want from their student loan forgiveness is we're just going to cut it and say you have no more debt. That ain't going to happen. You got to do some kind of good for the country or for your community or a charity or a nonprofit. If you're going to get something, you got to work if you're going to get something out of it.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see. Delete language in these subsections here, or these sections here, that would prohibit borrowers with federal Perkins loans made prior to July 1st, 1993, on or after October 1st, 1980, but before July 1st, 93, or FFELs made before July 1st, 93, from obtaining deferment of their loans during periods of otherwise eligible full-time volunteer work that includes providing religious instruction, conducting religious services, proselytizing, or engaging in fundraising to support religious activities. Okay, I mean, yeah, if it would otherwise qualify as volunteer work, if not for it being for a religious organization, I can kind of see deletion of that language. I can kind of understand that. But I don't know. I'm kind of against the expansion of what's eligible for grants and student loans because I really do think that throwing the doors open on stuff like that is just going to increase the country's operating deficit and then ultimately increase our national debt by just expanding what we're going to give out a Pell Grant to, because it's money that never needs to be paid back. It's just a mild injection into the economy from the federal government to a particular school.
And I don't think Pell Grant's the biggest of the problems. I think the problem are the subsidized loans that have to get paid back.
Well, I would say not even the subsidized, but the unsubsidized, because those are the ones that start accruing interest while you're in school.
Yeah.
Whereas subsidized doesn't accrue interest until 6 months after you've graduated or stopped attending. Whereas unsubsidized, from the word go, it's accruing interest. And then you're not required to make any payments on that until you've either not been in school for 6 months or you've graduated, and then 6 months after that. So basically you have that much time to find a job after graduating or ceasing attendance to start paying those back. So, I mean, I'm not entirely sure where I stand on that, aside from the fact of I disagree with it on the point of it being ultimately a pretty big increase in federal spending. especially for stuff that ultimately is just going to create a bit of a feedback loop on itself, because it's going to keep that money rotation going through that religious organization. Because I don't know, I don't see a person who's gone through and achieved, say, a doctorate of divinity being hired on in somewhere that requires a higher level degree or low end graduate degree for a position. I don't know. I don't see a doctorate of divinity having greater value than a doctorate in a field of study that actually helps to better the country.
So are you looking at just doctoral degrees, or are you looking at master's and bachelor's degrees?
No, I'm looking at all of it. I mean, just that was one of the more obvious examples that first came to mind is all.
There's a lot of religious education that is actually very compatible in a secular market, like a job market. One of the examples that I know of is Texas Bible College, where you're at. They offer an associate degree, I believe, in missions.
Okay.
Which is basically the same thing as project management.
I would say to a degree. I mean, that would require some curricular analysis, but in name, yes, I can see the association. In curriculum, I would have to look at the two side by side before agreeing to that comparison.
Yeah, now I can't remember if they did get it accredited or if they were in the process of it, but the curriculum includes like small business management, logistics and infrastructure, and like dealing with volunteers and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of different aspects that they teach that focuses on that. There's also a lot of religious and theological schools focus on psychology and counseling services that are like that's transferable to drug rehabilitation.
And that's fine. I just
so those are the kinds of degrees that we're talking about whenever we talk about.
True, but that's not all the degrees they're talking about. If those are the only degrees they were offering, okay, I would say, yeah, kick the doors open. But
so then why the difference based on whether or not the program is accredited? Why make it based on religion?
If they would do it based on accreditation, I wouldn't have an issue with it. If they were gonna do it based on accreditation, I'm cool with that. And if it can meet the accreditation standards that a comparable course at a secular school, then I don't really see where I would have a lot of problems with it.
Don't you have to have courses be accredited before you can use government loans on them?
At least in the public sector, yeah.
Well, it's the same thing, public, private.
True, but the thing is, like, we have a lot of issues with places like with some diploma mills, and I'm going to name drop at least a couple of them. Kaplan University, before it was acquired by Purdue Global, and what is it, Full Sail University? Both of those are diploma mills. They are extreme for-profit universities that all they do is communicate 9 kinds of sweet sounding bullshit to potential students and then sign them up. Don't really give them much of an education on what a master promissory note is, which is the thing that you have to sign to acknowledge that you're accepting a student loan. And then they max out your Pell Grant and your student loans. And at Full Sail University, sometimes they give you a laptop. So, it depends on the program you go into, I think. Like one of their programs, I think game design or whatever, they were offering up a MacBook Pro. Yeah. So
You would need it just to get through the program.
I mean, that's the kind of BS that really kind of gets to me, is there are schools like that. And so that's why I don't think something like this should be allowed to happen until we go through and reform our accreditation standards and what we accept as being an accredited course of study before offering federal funding to it. And so that's why I'm against this proposed rule right now, because our accreditation process and our accreditation system for higher education is a shit Sunday.
Well, but the thing is, where I'm at is, if it's so bad for the secular in terms of what's actually accredited, where's the fairness in saying that because it's bad for the secular group, we can't include religious education in the same grouping just because it might also be bad? You know, like,
It's not saying because it might also be bad. It's not attempting to. My reasoning for it, I would not consider a guilt by association or a guilt by potential association. It would be based on the fact of, we do not need to potentially expand the problem further before addressing it. And I would be the same at this point. I would be completely on board with barring any higher education facility from receiving accreditation for approval of federal funding or receiving federal monies as far as student loans and Pell Grants until the accreditation system was reformed, restructured, and put into place where it's actually effective, and not just this gigantic system of loopholes that allows these diploma mills to exist and just bleed federal funding while providing no real education to its students.
I'm of the opinion that if you don't institute this rule, you're basically doing religious segregation. Bless you. My cat sneezed.
I don't know. I'm not entirely sure.
We can both agree that the current system sucks, though. And
we can both agree that the current system sucks. And because the current system sucks, I don't think more crap needs to be piled into the parfait cup of doom here until we've figured out a way to clean the cup out and put something worth showing to someone in it. And that's my feeling on that. Okay, we got a couple of comments from someone going by the handle Absolute Truth. Just gonna ignore the first one because that's screw it. It's corny, so I'll say it. 2020, praise God for 2020 vision.
Nice.
As they say to a live stream of two fat guys wearing glasses. I mean, corrected to 2020, okay, but not just baseline 2020 vision. Says prayer in schools is good for our humanity. No, that's a violation of the Establishment Clause. Sorry.
I think prayer in schools is great.
Should a child be allowed to pray in school on their own, unbidden and unguided by faculty? Sure. Yes. I have no beef with that, because that's a personal thing. That is the child engaging in something of their own choice. I'm cool with that. Faculty-led prayer services, faculty-led prayer sessions, no, I'm not cool with that.
I'm not okay with that either, but I also think it would be good for there to be religious literature training in which prayers of different religions are taught, is from a poetry and a literature and historical perspective.
Okay, so absolute truth replies with spiritual vision, not physical vision. You're going to have to show some kind of evidentiary demonstration that spiritual is a thing.
You don't have to prove it to me. I accept it, and I'm
Yeah,
right
of
there
course
with
you accept it. You're a theist.
Yeah.
That's why you're on the show. I'm serious. That's one of the reasons why I wanted you on here and invited you to remain on as a co-host, because I want this to be an open dialogue with throwing the doors open and engendering as much intellectual honesty as possible by looking at things from as many different perspectives as we can.
We end up having a lot more in common than you would think.
We probably do, at least when it comes to maybe some of the political aspects of things.
The Shroud of Turin.
Oh God, so stupid. And okay, and that's also coming from a former Catholic. Stop talking about the Shroud of Turin. It's just a hoaxy pile of burlap that needs to be ignored. It's not worthy of discussion anymore. I brought it up for funsies, to be funny. Okay, I'm going to pull this one up because this is just, to me, it's comical.
All right.
I support all atheists to pray for the well-being of others. Atheists don't pray.
Well, maybe they're saying that.
I guess it depends on what you're going to call atheist, because I agree with the sentiment of, if you're an adherent to a particular belief system, then you're an atheist towards all other gods that aren't that one. I just happen to dismiss one more than you do.
I don't know. Maybe typo, and they're saying that they pray for your well-being.
It could be. Maybe they're trying to pray for my well-being. It's like, hey, if that makes you feel better and you're doing it, as an honest attempt to be a good person, fine. I will graciously accept your prayers. I don't think they'll do anything. Let's be clear. I don't think they're going to do anything. But if you want to do it and it makes you feel better and you're doing it just to be a nice person, I got no beef with that. You go right ahead. They also say, I pray where I desire for my well-being. No one has ever infringed on my basic constitutional rights. Okay, I mean, I'm happy no one's ever infringed upon your constitutional rights. That's fantastic. There's a lot of people out there that unfortunately can't say that, and I'm against violating a person's rights, regardless of who they are, regardless of what camp they're from. I don't care if you're atheist, theist, Democrat, Republican, Green Party, Democratic Socialist. I don't care. I don't want your rights infringed upon. This one I disagree with. Anytime any human being wills the well-being or positive energy of others, this is prayer. I have a few things I disagree with here. Prayer, as described, is an inherently religious thing. So, willing the well-being of another, I'm gonna say, is an overly generalized version of what you're going to describe as prayer. And if you overgeneralize it to that point, it makes the term meaningless. So either accept that it's a religious practice or use a different word. Or positive energy of others. I'm a very hard, sciencey minded type individual. I know that sounded very scientific, that language I used. But hard sciencey. Tasty. Gotta get all scientifical on you. So looking at it from a scientific standpoint, energy of others. Energy is just a physical system's capacity to do work. That's it. That's all energy is. It's the capacity of a physical system to do work. I pick up my keys, and there's energy contained within these keys. I'm holding them up here. Okay, they have potential energy. I let it go, and that's kinetic energy. That's all energy is.
I kind of halfway quasi disagree with you on this.
Okay,
So
let's hear it.
if you're putting forth work, that's energy, right? If you're building something.
Energy is the capacity of a physical system to do work. Yes.
Okay. What about like the kinetic energy?
Kinetic energy is energy in motion. So that's the
Okay.
work. That's work being done. Energy
So if
expended
you're
through work being done. Energy at its core is the capacity to do work. So that's a reference to energy in its base form, in potential form. Once it's set in motion, that is work.
so if I go to a soup kitchen and I cook soup and I
Uh-huh.
serve soup,
Okay.
that is energy, right?
That's several different forms of kinetic energy. Yes.
Okay.
Like
That
because
prayer.
there's the kinetic energy of you moving from one place to another. There's the kinetic energy you're imparting on the spoon as you stir the soup. There's the kinetic energy of the heat from the element being transferred to the soup itself. I mean, so there's different motions happening throughout that. So
I
it's a
believe that.
series. It's a series. Anything in physics ultimately boils down to a series of energetic exchanges to a point to achieve a point of equilibrium.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we get entropy from. Um, so absolute truth goes further, saying prayer is a spiritual concept for the well-being of all living soul beings. Souls don't exist. Prayer is not a religion. I didn't say it was a religion. I said it was a religious practice. So
That was just harsh when you're like souls don't exist. I was like, well,
okay, fine. I will backtrack that and go with there
say it.
is no evidence supporting the existence of a hypothetical soul. Period.
Okay.
There is no evidence. If you think you got evidence, present it. Whoever you are, I will happily look at it, and I guarantee you are most likely wrong. Prayer is not religion, simply a good act for everyone to be in a state of goodness. That just seems like word salad. Spiritual state of utopia. Kinetic energy is a neutral variable until a force acts upon it for good or evil. No, that is a misunderstanding of kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is energy in motion. If you want to talk about good versus evil or good or evil, you're talking about a force acting upon it for good or evil. You are going to have to demonstrate how we can physically test for a good force or an evil force. Because force is just mass times acceleration. I see you got your thinking chin scratch going there, Harry. What you got?
No, I'm just thinking about like, yeah, I think that if you're doing good actions with the right mentality, that's basically a form of prayer. Like that's a form of physical meditation. That's a
Okay.
religious.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Well, let's take a look at.
Not a scientific thought. It's just I would agree with that. If you're trying to do the what you perceive as the will of God and you're doing something good for humanity and you're not just sitting there praying it, you're you're not just sitting there thinking the words to your head. You're actually going out and doing these things, like you're feeding the homeless, you're building homes for the homeless, you're
Okay.
shoes on children that need shoeing. That's a weird verb.
Right.
That's a
So, in looking at things here, I'm going to go ahead and screen share again. So, we're gonna pull this up here. Oh boy, yeah. Prayer definition, and I'm gonna make that a little bit bigger so people can see easier. Prayer, a solemn request for help or expression of thanks addressed to God or an object of worship.
what
And
about
then scrolling down further, the biblical
yes.
definition, now this is from Wikipedia, but we're just going to go with this for now because just for ease of reference. Prayer in the Hebrew Bible is an evolving means of interacting with God, most frequently through a spontaneous, individual, unorganized form of petitioning and or thanking. In these instances, such as with Isaac, Moses, Samuel, and Job, the act of praying is a method of changing a situation for the better through interacting with God. So it's an expressly religious thing.
It is an expressly religious thing, but it's anything that is interacting with God. And like whenever it says, when I was hungry and you fed me, like
Okay.
that would be interacting with God.
I got to bring this up because this is another fundamental misunderstanding of physics. Water is in motion. Not always, but okay. If you push someone into a raging river, now that's negative energy. No, it's not. It's just energy. If you take a bath in moving warm water, now it's a good form of energy. No. No, 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 no. That is wrong on every possible level when you're talking about energy as pertains to science. Is that a negative action to push someone into a raging river? If they can't swim or they're guaranteed to drown, okay, I can agree with you that that is a negative action in that it adversely affects that other person's well-being. I can agree that taking a bath in warm water is a positive thing in that it prevents the spread of disease and promotes your health and well-being. That is not a form of energy. That is an action.
When we're talking about energy in the scientific stance, it's helpful to think of it almost like temperature. You can have more.
That's still energy. It's heat energy.
Yeah.
Like it's radiative energy.
I'm agreeing with you. Like the more heat you have, the more heat you have. You have less heat and less energy, but you never have negative heat or negative energy.
No, you don't. Although, like, then you get into the whole antimatter, dark matter thing, things like that. They're going further, saying the negative energy of pushing someone into raging waters now taints the pure river water.
But,
what?
But
no.
Aura of goodness or badness or fairness or sickness to it. It's
okay,
not
fine.
like,
well, now you have to demonstrate how auras exist. It's just compounding the problem further. I'm taking that comment down. The negative energy of pushing someone into raging waters now taints the pure river water. How? I mean, okay, no, it's not good to have a rotting corpse in water. No, it's not. Yes, that's going to taint it. But the act of pushing someone into a river alone does not mean that now when you drink that water, if it is free of impurities, that doesn't mean that something bad is going to happen to you or that you are somehow going to take on the taintedness of the other person's act of pushing someone into the river. You're not making any sense, dude.
Well, there's the scientific view of energy, and then there's like the quasi new agey look at auras and chakrams, and
which is complete bullshit. I'm just gonna put that out there.
I agree, but the idea that they're using energy is closer to this side and trying to equate the two.
And now you cannot mix clean water with dirty water. I agree. But no, that's not true. It will never become clean again. No. That is not true. You can clean dirty water.
You can filter it.
Yeah, like there are natural filtration systems. Like, did you know that that if you take a 55-gallon water tank, fill it with murky pond water, like East Texas pond water, and you put about like it's either 15 or 25 pounds of mussels in there, they can clean all of that water, all the particulate matter out of that water to like near RO levels of clean within a matter of a couple of hours.
Wow.
Like it's insane.
That makes me wonder what is in mussels when I eat them because they're tasty and they don't taste like poison.
Okay, now Absolute Truth is talking about spiritual meaning. It's like, okay, I get that you're talking about spiritual meaning. You still have to demonstrate how that has any effect on the natural world, period. Because we can test for this to a certain extent. You claim that there is some negative energy imparted upon pure river water if someone were to aggressively push someone into that river by means of attempting to kill them. So let's grant that. Let's grant that that person got pushed in there with malicious intent and they're dead. Now we're going to, and so at this point, you're saying that that river is now tainted, it's dirty, it will never become clean again. Okay, fine. Now let's take random person that has no knowledge of what happened and have them drink that river water that is otherwise free of impurity, aside from this negative energy, negative spiritual energy you believe is imparted upon it. Okay? And let them go about their lives. How are you going to test for that negative energy being imparted upon that person? How are you going to judge that? By what method are you going to test it? If you can't, then what you're saying is completely unprovable, which means it's untestable, it's unfalsifiable, meaning it is no different from just a lie.
You could test it subjectively. You could give them a psychoanalysis like questionnaire beforehand and afterward, and saying if drinking the water affected them.
Perhaps, but you would have to find a way to also isolate them from every other possible human or environmental interaction that person could possibly have to determine that the psychological change was somehow directly causally linked to the drinking of that water.
Well, I mean, you give them a test, take 100 people, set them in 100 different rooms, have 50 of them drink Aquafina, 50 of them drink murder water.
Murder water. Murder duo.
And if you see that there's statistical difference, then you know that the water.
Okay, that's fine. We'll use an MMPI battery. I'm fine with that. Let's do that. But I'm going to go ahead and make a testable hypothesis right now. There will be no appreciable difference beyond margin of error for an MMPI. Oh, got to get your murder water on.
This reminds me of a Death Clock. Mermaider.
Dude, have you seen the Bat Metal video for that? It's amazing.
No, I hadn't.
Okay, so the YouTube channel is called Arhybes. Arhybes. And you have Bat Metal 1, 2, and 3. The first one, oh crap, I can't remember it. I can't remember the actual first Death Clock song they used for it. The second one was Mermaider. And then the other one was like Resurrecting the Joker or whatever. It's hilarious. I love it.
It's not the troll one? Resurrecting the Troll song?
Maybe? I don't know. I think that I want to say that all three of those songs come off of Laser Cannon Death Sentence. That album. Okay, so we've gotten some more comments from Absolute Truth, so we'll go through this briefly. Saying that if I came into the world 100% clean, no evil, okay, you have to demonstrate how something is evil. That's a very nebulous term that's based on moralistic interpretation. By someone starts hurting me, my purity levels can become broken. But if you've not committed evil, having evil done upon you breaks your purity level.
I'm going to disagree with that.
That sounds like victim blaming.
Because and theologically, Jesus would have been perfect, even though he was tortured.
Right. But there again, there's that whole fully God and fully man thing. So which is, to me, a violation of non-contradiction.
Well, regardless of that, there was no purity or innocence or perfection that was diminished by someone else acting upon him.
Right.
So,
but there again, there might be the argument saying that it was because he voluntarily submitted himself to that. Or he did this knowing this was going to happen to him. And so because he knew this was going to happen to him, it's somehow self-inflicted? but I don't. That doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, I hate to say this, but based on just the straight literal reading of what absolute truth has said, if I came into the world 100% clean, meaning no evil, by someone starts hurting me, my purity levels can become broken. That sounds dangerously close to a person who is sexually assaulted is somehow to blame for being sexually assaulted. That's dangerously close to that territory, the way that reads. Now, that could be based on English may not be absolute truth's first language. If it's not, please clarify. But that's a real. I don't like that.
If someone does something to you, it justifies your bad actions going forward.
Yeah, so that becomes a teleological argument of the ends justifying the means.
I'm not into that.
No, saying it's also harder to become more good if someone would keep hurting that other living soul being. You can bend a flexible material only so far before it snaps. Once someone snaps, meaning loses all purity, in parentheses, it will become unstable and evil driven. That's a massive burden of proof that absolute truth is incurring by saying that, and you got a long way to go before showing that's anywhere close to evident, Haas.
From an atheist perspective, evil is not a tangible thing, or may not even exist. So possibly what absolute truth is using here might be better described as psychological trauma. From
Possibly.
a Christian perspective, no one is beyond redemption, and God is all powerful. So you can't blame someone else's actions for your propensity to decide to turn evil one day.
Okay.
You're always within the realm of redemption. It's a personal decision that you make that's between you and God.
Right. And they also say, how many times can you smack someone before you might realize good no longer exists? You haven't demonstrated how good exists to begin with. How are we defining?
Really quick.
Say what?
Like, this got really dark really quick. Like, this reminds me of that movie.
Yeah.
Games. Have you ever seen it?
Which one?
Funny Games.
Dude, I just watched that like 3 days ago. Not even gonna lie. Say what?
The new one or the old one?
The one in 2007 with Michael Pitt. I actually like that version better than the German version.
Okay, I only saw the German version, but
dude, I think it's Funny Games, if I remember right, is on Hulu. No, not on Hulu. It's on Vudu. It's free to watch with ads, and in all honesty, the ads on Vudu are nowhere near as intrusive as they are with Hulu.
How much money did you make from saying that right now?
None. I'm not sponsored by anybody or endorsed by anybody. Although I'll happily accept endorsements depending on what it is.
But isn't that like what we're talking about right now, kind of?
To an extent, yeah. Like saying, how many times can you smack someone before you might realize good no longer exists? How are we defining good? Like, that's a big problem there. If we're defining good as something that is beneficial to the organism, okay, then what's good for one is not good for others. I mean, I'm going to go to a really off-the-wall place here, but BDSM practices, to them, smacking each other around is a very good thing because they get something out of it that they see as a net positive gain from an emotional standpoint. So in what context are you looking at this? How are you defining good, and in what context are you defining these things? You have to be specific. What?
The masochist said, "Hurt me," and the sadist said, "No."
Okay, that's actually pretty funny. But yeah, no, you look at BDSM practices and the world of kink and things like that. Okay, if it's done with mutual consent, then with mutual consent between adults, that's that would be considered good because you are imparting some beneficial side effect through that action, which would make it inherently good. So so they're saying good in terms of benefit to all life forms with no harm. You're asking for the impossible.
Categorical imperative.
What's that?
Categorical imperative. Kant.
I don't think there's any one action that any entity can take that would somehow be beneficial to all life forms while causing no harm.
You sound like a socialist.
Say what?
I said you sound like a socialist. I heard someone talking earlier about how
You're just jealous because I have more hair than you.
Two ideologies where there's a finite number of things that people have to work amongst with themselves. So basically the world is a zero-sum game. So you would not be able to take action that was good for one person without taking away from someone else. The other aspect is that there's an infinite number of possible things that can be created based upon your ability to contribute. So you can contribute more work, or you can acquire more things that are made. There's always an infinite amount of stuff that can be done. And so doing something good for someone doesn't necessarily take away from anyone else or any other thing. There are things that are mutually exclusive for all parties and that have only positive consequences.
Okay, but I don't know. Maybe from a person to person aspect, I don't see that being true across the broader spectrum. Like, for instance, okay, I've got this cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
It was a positive thing for me to purchase this cell phone because I needed a phone. I needed a phone for work, for school, for different things. So this is a positive thing for me. It was positive. It was a positive outcome to who I purchased it from because they made a sale and thus made money from the economic standpoint.
Yeah.
However, it could be considered a net negative in that more natural resources were used to produce that thing, and as such, quite possibly came from some economically disadvantaged region of the country or region of the planet. And in the collection of that, organisms were harmed in the collection of those materials, either through displacement, wipeout, the destruction of vegetation. So there's still a negative aspect. There's still a net harm being caused.
What about Lister and the creation of antiseptics?
Okay, you're killing off bacteria and things like that. That's still a positive for us, but a negative for something else.
Who got hurt by it?
Microorganisms.
Life got hurt by it.
Microorganisms.
They're not sentient.
Okay. At what point did we say that sentience was required to perceive harm, or that sentience was required for harm to happen? Trees are not sentient, but if we cut them down, that's harm.
You can't do anything in life without killing your own cells.
That's my point exactly, is that what Absolute Truth is saying, good in terms of benefit to all life forms with no harm, is not possible.
So good, what we're referring to as benefit has to be something that is separate from alive or decay.
Well, it said good in terms of benefit, so as in it's beneficial to all life forms with no harm. So that whole statement renders it impossible.
Well, it's impossible to have anything that exists without having harm under your definitions, Drew, because all things are falling apart slowly. The sun's going to burn out.
Okay.
So
that's how physics works.
So then that's pure nihilism. Like there's no good
No,
that's possible.
not necessarily. I mean, personally, I'm an atheist. Like, in it, to sum it up as succinctly as possible, I'm more of an atheist existentialist. I agree a lot with Jean-Paul Sartre in that, okay, congratulations, you exist. Any purpose to your life is something that you derive from, it through what you do, what you choose to do, the choices you make, the actions you take is what determines your purpose in life. It's up to you. Whatever.
Because everything you do is going to be negative, according to
Okay,
this.
that doesn't mean that you can't derive purpose from it.
You can derive
It just means that at some point you're going to have to accept the fact axiomatically that no matter what you do, it is going to cause harm to someone or something. And that the distinction between what is harm to one and benefit to another is arbitrary.
Okay, well, I'm going to reject the reality that I axiomatically am only going to cause harm to people and that my self-purpose should be defined by how much harm I'm inflicting and why I'm doing it. But I'm not going to be a serial killer today, thank you.
Somewhat, and then he says, then I assume absolute truth is a he. I do apologize if you are a woman or other whatever it is.
Of the truth
of absolute truth, I did, yes.
Yeah. Form, and it was without gender, and is without name.
Well, I guess to some degree I'm a little bit justified in saying he, because generally speaking, at least based on the analytics that Google has provided to me, the data analytics has shown that it is statistically more likely that it is a male who is commenting, or someone who identifies as male commenting on my videos, as it is female.
It's a YouTube commenter at noon on a Sunday.
Oh, not at noon, at 2:11 in the afternoon at this point. Absolute Truth asks, what is the ultimate dilemma, not God-related, atheists have with the reality we all live in?
It's an interesting question.
He, him, plus feminine-driven mindset. Not sure how that works, but okay, I will grant it to you. That's what you are. That's what you choose to self-identify as. You know, far be it from me to stifle your flair.
Yeah. So we'll just stick with he's and hims.
Yep, not possible in the physical plane of existence, but can be reduced 80% plus. However, if we use scientific advancement to seek spiritual manifestations, cellular decay might become zero? What? Or to quote Tim Allen,
That was a pretty good Tim Allen.
Thank you. I watched Home Improvement so much as a child, man. I've been like perfecting that noise for years. That just comes across as word salad to me.
Well,
I mean, I can kind of see what they're trying to talk about. Maybe. I mean, first talking about cellular decay might become zero. I don't know. That's not how DNA works currently. CRISPR-Cas9 theoretically could be used to remove the telomere off of a DNA molecule, and as such, essentially make our DNA infinitely replicating. And it's possible, or it could just cause massive, gigantic cancers by doing that. I mean,
you could add to the ends like a lobster.
Yes, you could. Yes, because as far as we can tell, lobsters are functionally immortal, and we don't actually see one dying by natural causes. So, okay, here we go. Now we're getting into some woo. Vibrations. Say what?
I'm going to eat more lobster.
I don't think that's going to help you very much, but lobster is very tasty. Although, funnily enough, it was equated to feeding prisoners rats, and it was considered inhumane to feed lobster to prisoners by Dutch legal standards back in like the 18th century. What?
I have low cholesterol. It is going to help me because I have low cholesterol.
Oh, okay. Lots of butter. So here's where we get into some woo and not John Woo territory, unfortunately. I'll wait for you to get back, Harry.
Oh, no, you can keep going.
Okay, so Absolute Truth says vibrations, frequency, energy of manipulated correctly heals cellular decay. That doesn't make any sense.
Say that again. Vibrations does what?
Vibrations, frequency, energy of manipulated correctly. I'm assuming they mean if, not of. So I'm going to reread that. Vibrations, frequency, and energy, if manipulated correctly, heals cellular decay. If you vibrate love in a positive manner toward water, okay, no. This is the Emoto crap. This was proved completely false. This is complete bullshit. Getting you, wow, shrimp party tray. Jeez, dude. If you vibrate love in positive manner toward water, then a droplet creates beautiful symmetrical crystals. Okay, no. So crystal or crystalline is an ordered physical structure. The reason why it happens in water is if water freezes slowly, because it allows the molecules in that water to order themselves in a pattern that creates that crystalline structure. That's why that happens. What you're talking about is some bullshit from this Japanese wannabe PhD that doesn't have a recognized PhD, Emoto, talking about these Japanese water experiments. It's complete nonsense. It's complete bullshit. If you want to know more about that one, in all honesty, one of my favorite YouTubers actually addresses this in his series called Why Do People Laugh at Spirit Science? And it's a channel called Martymer81, Martymer 81. Go look at it. Go watch that series, and you will figure out why everything about that is complete nonsense. It has been proven that 5G radiation is affecting the health of humans. Citation needed.
5G radiation isn't even like a thing.
Yeah, I mean, like,
all the G means is generation. It's the
exactly. It's just a boost in transmission efficiency.
Yeah.
As far as what I've been able to tell, there's been no real market change in the technology itself. Just we've devised better construction methods to make the reliability of data transmission more efficient. We've made it more reliable.
There is actually a really huge difference.
Okay, go for it. Please tell me.
Part of the 5G that's coming out uses really short waves, and some of it uses long waves.
Okay, so it's a combination of short and long wave transmission.
Well, the 5G that runs on super short waves, it doesn't penetrate through anything.
Okay.
So like if you're behind a tree, it will like drop your signal. So they have to make these little miniature pop-up antennas all over the place.
Okay.
And so what they're probably going to do is like whenever you have like a sporting event, they'll have them there so you can use that one.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not there, you'll probably still like switch over to LTE or something.
Okay. So basically it's just going to be something that happens here and there. Okay. Absolute Truth says Google radiation affects plant life. You know what? I'm going to Google specifically 5G radiation.
This is my dad? Is he trolling us?
I don't know. Maybe. Let's see. Is 5G dangerous to health? Radio waves are non-ionizing. The sun's ultraviolet rays fall within this harmful category and can lead to skin cancers. There are strict advisory limits for exposure to even higher energy radiation levels, such as medical X-rays and gamma rays, which can both lead to damaging effects on the human body. Negative effects of 5G. Many studies have associated low RFR exposure with a litany of health effects. That's from Elux magazine. So, okay, okay, here we go. From the New York Times, the 5G health hazard that isn't. How? Really? Oh, screw you, New York Times.
It's keto friendly.
Oh, shrimp, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. It's talking about like just a nonsense chart and a misinterpretation of misinterpretation of data. So, yeah. If the waves are too short, they disrupt cellular growth and cells vibrate violently. No, not necessarily, because if it's not a competing frequency or what would be considered a vibratory frequency for those cells, then it's not going to do anything to it.
The shortest wavelengths that are out there are like the visible spectrum. And the fact that we can see light and not like stop growing is pretty much proof that short wavelengths don't really have that much of an effect upon cellular regeneration.
Exactly. I mean, continued exposure to ultraviolet radiation, which is on the longer wavelength of the light spectrum, that can cause skin cancer. Like continued exposure to UVA and UVB, but that's still non-penetrating. It's not happening inside the body. It's the skin. The U.S. military has a vibration frequency machine or weapon that can kill people. No, you're gonna get tired of me saying this absolute truth, but citation needed.
You don't need a citation because I know what you're talking about.
I mean, we have. I know that that DARPA has done research on the pain rifle, and okay, yeah. I mean, yes, we know what resonant frequencies are. So yes, if you can hit somebody with a frequency that is opposite to the heart rhythm, yes, you can cause a cardiac event. You can cause a heart attack.
What about the brown note?
Yeah, there's the brown note. I mean, no, not this seek and you shall find bullshit, absolute truth. If you're going to make an assertion, if you're going to make a claim, back the shit up with evidence, or you can stop commenting.
I did research on this whenever I was in college. But
the burden of proof is not on you to prove this guy's point. The burden of proof is on him to show what he's saying is accurate. And okay, yes, what you're saying there is intellectually dishonest and disingenuous. Just because the U.S. military has developed a weapon that can use certain frequencies to kill someone does not mean that whatever is coming out of a 5G tower is going to cause harm. That's called a non sequitur. That one thing does not have anything to do with the other.
I don't think it can kill people based upon the frequency.
If it could, they wouldn't be installing it.
Unless they wanted to kill everyone.
Including themselves.
Yes.
I mean, okay. So, effectively now 5G is being installed by Jim Jones?
He faked his death just like Elvis.
Oh, of course. Totally. Yeah, that cyanide-laced Flavor Aid wouldn't kill anybody, right?
It was him, Elvis, and Tupac.
Yeah, Tupac sure did fake getting shot 6 times in the chest at point blank range.
They're installing 5G towers around the country.
Okay, is this what is this going to be? Part of a re-release of Killuminati from Death Row Records or something?
How you getting it?
I'm sorry, no. Like 5G is not tested enough for public use. Okay, now see that I could possibly get behind. If indeed it has not received as much testing or adequate testing as compared to other iterations of cellular communication, okay, that's cool. If you want more testing done, that's fine. If it hasn't been tested enough, or if it has not been tested to the same degree that other versions have, then okay, I'm right there with you. Let's continue testing before pushing public usage. However, if you're saying it hasn't been tested enough, then you cannot say it's been proven to cause harm. You don't get one along with the other. You can't eat your cake and it magically still be on the plate after you've done so. Yeah, most people don't realize that. The proper wording of that phrase is you cannot eat your cake and have it too. We've been saying it wrong for over 400 years.
I don't like cake. I like shrimps.
Hey, I'm cool with shrimps. I mean, I'm cool with eating shrimp. I mean, it depends on the cake as to whether or not I'll eat it, but I'm not a big sweets guy. Yeah, I know. What?
Shrimp cake.
No. We're no. No. It's where I need this gif of Tracy Morgan from Cop Out, just going no, and just keep going and going because not happening. So yeah, going back through all this stuff, the Emoto thing, complete nonsense. The 5G thing, pick one. Either you say it's proven to cause harm or it hasn't been tested enough. If it hasn't been tested enough, then it hasn't been proven to cause harm. And if it's been proven to cause harm, then you're assuming that enough testing has been done to dismiss it.
That sounds about right.
I mean, so yeah, no, those two are effectively mutually exclusive. Americans are on the rise for pill use due to many negative financial decisions made by corporations and the U.S. government. I don't know. That's gonna be a really hard thing to prove, dude. But yeah, no, this whole this whole using vibrations, frequency, and energy manipulation is going to stop cellular decay. No, sorry.
But what if
That's like saying grabbing your magical healing crystals and we're going to go out and cure cancer.
But what if 5G is the vibration frequency that's positive and it's going to stop everyone from dying?
I'd say you got a long road to hoe as far as showing that to be a thing, but hey, health problems are rising. Okay, that doesn't mean it's the government's fault. That's the problem with living in a free society. You are free to do things that cause you harm.
But part of it could be the government's fault.
Okay, if the government is engaging in mass misinformation or disinformation to a degree that it causes you, based on their recommendation or based on their propaganda, to make a decision that causes you harm, then yes, that would be the government's fault, at least in an indirect sense. Okay, I'm right there with you. However, the nature of living in a free society is such that we are free to make our own decisions, unless the government passes into law that we are required to make a decision in a particular way to yield a specific outcome that causes harm. Then unless they pass legislation thus to quote Ben Shapiro, enforcing it at the end of a gun, you're still free to do largely what you want. Or to quote Ron Swanson, if you want to eat continuously until you balloon up to 600 pounds and die at the age of 40 from a heart attack, you're free to do so.
So, like, there was a doctor in South Africa who he was saying that the high sugar, high carb diets that the government was telling people were not healthy, and he suggested other solutions. And then the government like sued him and took away his medical license for questioning their nutrition guidelines.
Okay, that's a problem in South Africa, and that should be addressed. And the people there, if they have some of the same similar constitutional protections that we do in this country, then they need to exercise the right to vote the jack-offs out of office that are doing that kind of thing, and listen to some actual science. Okay, and here we go from Absolute Truth. This is something that I'm going to rail on.
Do we have anyone else other than Absolute Truth commenting, or is it just?
It's just Absolute Truth. It's just AT. Crystals have been proven to cure life forms. No, they haven't. But most crystals are stripped from Mother Earth to make servers, electronic devices, and so on for capitalism, gluttony, consumption.
But you can make ice crystals.
Yeah. It's called let water freeze slowly over time.
What if you had technology made out of ice? Like the Fortress.
I mean, except the Fortress of Solitude wasn't made out of ice.
It might as well have been.
I mean, the way they portray it, yes, it might as well have been ice. But at the same time, when you look at it, it actually is just crystals. Crystals, mica, and other minerals have memory. No, they don't, because they don't have any agency.
Mica has memory.
If you're talking about a person named Micah, okay. I kind of figured. But if you're talking about mica, the mineral, no, it doesn't. I mean, okay, yes, we have artificially created things like logic diamonds with which to write information into, so we can use them in a capacitive sense for storage. But that diamond doesn't know, that crystal doesn't know those things.
It doesn't have sentience.
Yeah, so no, it doesn't have memory. It has storage capacity based on what we ascribe to it, based on how we purposely grow that crystal to do that specific thing. You can't just grab any old rock out of the dirt or any old crystal out of the rock tumbler at the national park and plug it into a hard drive and start storing information on it. It has to be purposely cultivated to do that one task. Memory on the precise frequency heals life forms. That doesn't make any sense. Memory doesn't heal anything. Also, if you can sing in a high pitched frequency, you can break a glass. Yes, because you are emitting sounds at the resonant frequency of that glass by which to shatter it.
But if you anyway,
I think we've go ahead.
If you sing at a high enough frequency into a crystal glass, will it remember the song and sing back?
No. Sorry, but no. Anyway, I think we've given AT enough time. Thanks for commenting. I'm happy to ridicule your bad ideas any day. That doesn't mean I don't respect you as a person. I'm sure you're probably a wonderful person to hang around and maybe a bit of fun to get around a campfire and a couple of beers in to see what kind of stuff you spew. But at the same time, that doesn't mean I have to respect your ideas, because every idea you have espoused thus far is not worthy of respect. So feel free to chime back in next week, or hopefully later this evening if William actually follows through tonight, for us to do a beer stream at 6 o'clock tonight. So I will talk to you all later. Thank you very much for watching. Links to support the channel are down below. Thank you all, and have a great day.